Welcome, deep divers. Imagine this. A man standing right on the edge. He's got immense wealth, a huge family, everything he seemingly worked for. But he is absolutely consumed by terror.
Yeah, a deep, gut-wrenching fear.
Exactly. For 20 long years, he's basically been running from a past that was, well, pretty brutal, a past he created. And now that past is hurtling towards him like an unstoppable force.
And he's about to face not just, the brother he wronged, but something much deeper. An encounter that's going to fundamentally change who he is.
Right down to his core. It will literally give him a new name, a new destiny. This is the incredible pivotal story of Jacob found right here in Genesis chapter 32.
It's such a moment of unparalleled spiritual intensity, isn't it? Jacob's journey here isn't just about physically getting back home.
No, it's way more than that.
It's a profound spiritual reckoning. He has to deal with his past, his identity, who he really is, and his complicated relationship with God.
Absolutely. This chapter is just this rich tapestry. You've got threads of raw human fear woven right alongside these moments of profound divine intervention and, well, radical spiritual evolution.
And it offers such timeless lessons, It shows us how these incredibly intense personal struggles, the things we often try to avoid, can actually lead to fundamental, irreversible transformation.
Couldn't agree more. Today, you and I are taking a deep dive into Genesis chapter 32. It's a narrative that really captures Jacob's profound transformation. We're going to trace his journey from, let's be honest, the cunning, guilt-ridden schemer we know.
Yeah, the heel grabber.
To the man renamed Israel, one who literally struggles with God and somehow prevails, but carries a permanent mark from that encounter.
A mark he can't hide.
Exactly. So our mission in this deep dive is to really unpack the story, look at its deeper meaning, explore its historical context, which is fascinating in itself, and delve into the powerful metaphors and typologies of that famous wrestling match.
And we'll compare his anxieties, which feel so real, to our own modern worries. It's surprisingly relatable.
Totally. And we'll deeply analyze this whole concept of a name change, what it means spiritually, psychologically, theologically, and even socially. Get ready for some, hopefully, aha moments that connect this ancient text right to your contemporary experience.
Yeah, revealing insights that definitely resonate far beyond just the pages of Scripture.
Okay, so let's set the stage. We've got Jacob finally heading back to Canaan after 2 decades with his uncle Laban. He's not the same man who fled.
Not at all. He's now a man of considerable wealth. He's got this large family.
Right. Wives, kids, servants, livestock, the works.
Yeah. And the narrative just throws him right into it. A series of encounters, both divine and, well, deeply human and terrifying.
It starts almost immediately with something pretty extraordinary, doesn't it?
It really does. His journey kicks off with this powerful, almost surreal encounter. The text says that as Jacob and his household started out, angels of God came to meet him.
Not just a feeling. He saw them.
He saw them. It wasn't subtle. He exclaims, "This is God's camp," and he names the place Mahanaim. It means 2 camps or 2 armies. It's this striking opening, like a supernatural reassurance of divine presence, divine protection, almost a celestial heads up about the battles ahead, even as he's about to face some very real earthly threats.
But that divine assurance, as amazing as seeing angels must have been, it seems to fade pretty quickly when reality hits.
Oh, yeah. It gives way almost immediately to a very human, very palpable fear. Jacob knows he can't just waltz back into Canaan, not after how he left.
You got that history with Esau hanging over him.
Exactly. His estranged brother. And this is where Jacob, the shrewd strategist, the planner, immediately comes back to the surface.
He goes into problem-solving mode.
Totally. He sends messengers ahead to Esau, who settled down in Seir, the land of Edom, and the message itself is, well, meticulously crafted.
How so?
It's all about humility, almost deference. Jacob calls himself your servant and Esau my master. He lays out his vast wealth, oxen, donkeys, sheep, goats, servants.
But that's just bragging, or is there a point?
There's definitely a point. It's not just a status update. It's a calculated move to, butter him up. To show he's successful, doesn't need anything from Esau, and hopes for favor. Basically, he's trying to buy friendship, or at least neutrality.
It sounds like ancient Near Eastern diplomacy 101, trying to smooth over a decades-old wound with wealth and humility.
Precisely. A carefully worded diplomatic overture. But this careful planning, this meticulous diplomacy, it gets a response that just shatters him.
The messengers come back. And the news isn't good.
It's terrifying. Their report is chillingly brief. Basically, we talked to your brother Esau, he's on his way to meet you.
Okay, so far maybe okay.
But he has 400 men with him.
400 men. That's not a welcoming party?
Not in that context. For Jacob, this is an army. It confirms his deepest, most primal fears. Esau hasn't forgotten. He's coming for vengeance. It just casts this long, dark shadow over any divine assurances he might have felt moments before.
The tension must have been instantaneous, overwhelming.
You can almost feel his panic leap off the page. The scripture says he was greatly afraid and distressed. It's a complete shift from any confidence or cautious optimism he might have had.
Pure terror.
Absolutely. And in that panic, Jacob's inherent cunning, his survival instinct, takes over. It manifests in this desperate survival strategy.
What does he do?
He immediately divides his entire company. Wives, children, servants, all the flocks, herds, camels, everything. Splits it into 2 separate camps.
Why 2? What's left watching?
His rationale is starkly pragmatic. He thinks if Esau attacks one group, maybe the other can escape. It's a shrewd calculation, definitely, but it's entirely fear-driven, a primal human response trying to control what feels utterly uncontrollable.
It's in that moment, though, right? When his human strategies feel like they might not be enough, that's when he turns somewhere else.
Yes. When he's profoundly distressed, likely feeling his plans are inadequate, he finally turns to a higher power. He offers this heartfelt prayer that's just a masterclass in humility and desperate petition.
Tell us about that prayer. It feels really significant.
It's a pivotal moment, a raw blend of profound gratitude for past blessings and just sheer naked fear. He starts by addressing God as God of my grandfather Abraham and my father Isaac, invoking the covenant, the promises made generations before.
Reminding God, essentially.
Reminding God and perhaps reminding himself, too. He humbly points out God's own instruction to return to your land and to your relatives, and the promise that God would treat me kindly.
Then he gets really personal about his own situation.
He does. He lays bare his feeling of unworthiness. He says, I am not worthy of all the faithfulness and unfailing love you have shown to me, your servant. He recalls leaving home with nothing but a walking stick, and now returning with enough people and possessions to fill 2 camps.
Acknowledging God's blessing despite his own past.
Exactly. Highlighting God's past blessings despite his own flaws. But ultimately, his plea is incredibly direct. Rescue me, please, from my brother Esau. He explicitly states his fear, for I am afraid he will come and attack me and also the mothers with their children.
Wow, that's specific.
It is. It shows the depth of his terror. And he finishes by reiterating God's promise to multiply his descendants, making them as numerous as the sands along the seashore. It's this powerful, honest appeal rooted in deep fear, but still desperately clinging to divine faithfulness.
But even after pouring his heart out in prayer like that, Jacob doesn't just sit back and wait, does he? He's still planning.
That's such a keen observation. He doesn't completely abandon his human efforts. It's almost like a secondary layer of diplomacy, or maybe just him continuing to try and control the outcome as much as possible.
So what's the next plan?
Despite his earnest prayer, he spends that night meticulously preparing this huge present for Esau, taken from his own possessions, and the scale is just staggering.
Like what?
We're talking 200 female goats, 20 male goats, 200 ewes, 20 rams, 30 female camels with their young, 40 cows, 10 bulls, 20 female donkeys, and 10 male donkeys. A fortune in livestock.
Wow. That's not just a token gift.
Not at all. And he's strategic about it. He tells his servants to lead these groups of animals ahead, one after another, separated by a deliberate distance.
Why the spacing?
To create this cumulative effect, each herdsman is given a specific script. Tell Esau the animals belong to your servant Jacob. They're a present for his master Esau. And crucially, Jacob, is coming right behind us.
So Esau keeps receiving wave after wave of gifts before he even sees Jacob.
Exactly. Jacob's explicit plan, the text says, was to appease Esau with the presents before meeting him face to face. He hoped perhaps he'll be friendly to us. It was a calculated diplomatic move, playing on ancient Near Eastern customs to try and soften Esau's anticipated anger.
Okay, so he's prayed, he's divided his camps, he's sent this massive parade of gifts. He's pretty much exhausted every human strategy he can think of.
Pretty much. But then he does something really deliberate, really significant. He engineers a moment of profound isolation for himself.
How does he do that?
He sends everyone else across the Jabbok River. His 2 wives, his 2 concubines, his 11 sons, all his remaining possessions. They all cross the ford in Gilead.
Leaving Jacob.
Leaving Jacob all alone in the camp on the other side of the river, this physical isolation is just this moment of profound vulnerability. He's stripped himself of all his human defenses, all his carefully constructed strategies.
Setting the stage for something entirely different.
Precisely. It immediately precedes the spiritual confrontation that will define him like nothing else before.
And that's when it happens, the moment everyone remembers in this chapter, the wrestling match.
Right. Out of the darkness, this mysterious man appears and wrestles with Jacob all night long until dawn.
And it's not an easy fight, apparently.
What's fascinating is the text says the man cannot prevail against Jacob. This isn't a one-sided beatdown. Jacob is holding his own.
So the man changes tactics.
Seeing this, the man strikes Jacob's hip, dislocating it right from the socket. It's a deliberate act, instantly changing the dynamic. It signals this isn't just about physical strength anymore.
And the man wants to leave.
Yeah, he says, "Let me go, for it is dawn." But Jacob, even injured, even limping now, famously refuses. He says, "I will not let you go unless you bless me."
Incredible tenacity.
It really is. It shows this incredible persistence, this profound spiritual yearning. He refuses to give up until he gets what he now knows he needs, not safety through strategy, but a blessing, a divine affirmation. It's such a shift from his earlier manipulative seizing of blessings to this desperate, persistent clinging for divine favor.
And this moment of tenacity, even while he's physically broken, leads to the big identity shift.
Exactly. The name change. It's arguably one of the most significant identity shifts in the entire Bible.
The man asks him his name, right?
Yes. And it's more than just asking for a label. He demands an identity. What is your name? And Jacob, exhausted, limping, finally speaks it. Jacob.
Acknowledging who he's been.
Acknowledging it all. Supplanter, deceiver. It's not just a name, it's a lifetime of cunning, of grasping, of running. He's stripped bare, forced to confront the truth of who he's been.
And only after that confession.
Only then does the man declare, "Your name will no longer be Jacob, it is now Israel."
Israel, meaning?
Meaning, he who struggles with God, or God strives. The man continues, because you have struggled with both God and men and have won. Or prevailed, perhaps?
Jacob still wants to know who he wrestled with.
He asks the man's name, still seeking full understanding, but the man replies, kind of cryptically, "Why do you ask?" And then, right there, he blesses Jacob.
Yeah. So the shift from Jacob, the deceiver, to Israel, the God wrestler, is complete. It highlights just how much weight names carried back then, doesn't it?
Immense weight. It signifies a complete, divinely ordained transformation of character and destiny.
And Jacob is left with a permanent reminder of this night.
A very distinct physical mark. He names the place Peniel, which means face of God. He explains why. "For I have seen God face to face, yet my life has been spared."
An incredible claim.
Absolutely. And as the sun rises, as he leaves Peniel, he is limping because of that dislocated hip. It's a permanent physical reminder of the divine encounter of his transformation.
So the injury, the renaming of the place, powerful symbols.
They symbolize his brokenness, yes, but also his newfound dependence on God, the humbling of his self-reliance. That limp isn't really a sign of weakness. You could see it as a visible receipt of his encounter. A badge of grace proclaiming daily that his real power now comes from surrender, not from his own schemes.
And the impact didn't stop with Jacob. It even created a lasting custom.
Right. The chapter concludes by noting that even today, the people of Israel don't eat meat from near the hip. Specifically, the sinew of the hip, the sciatic nerve area, which was touched in memory of what happened that night.
So it establishes a reason, a historical etiology, for an ongoing Israelite custom.
Exactly. It highlights the enduring cultural and religious impact of this single transformative event on an entire people. It ties their present practices directly back to their patriarch's pivotal and painful experience. A remarkable testament to how deeply this struggle resonated through generations.
Okay, so we have this incredibly dramatic sequence of events. To really grasp its significance, though, we need to understand the world Jacob lived in. This wasn't happening in a vacuum.
Not at all. It's deeply anchored in its time and place.
So paint a picture for us. What was the historical context?
We're talking about the Bronze Age in the ancient Near East, roughly somewhere between 2000 and 1800 BCE. This was a time of semi-nomadic tribal life, lots of migrations, clans moving around.
And family dynamics were pretty intense back then.
Incredibly intense. Family feuds, like the one between Jacob and Esau, weren't just disagreements. They could easily escalate into violent conflicts, threatening lives, property, the whole clan's survival.
So Jacob's fear of Esau wasn't just paranoia, it was rational.
Entirely rational, given the brutal realities of the time, and things like diplomatic practices, sending those elaborate gifts Jacob prepared, that was common. A sophisticated way for tribal leaders to try and resolve conflicts or appease potential enemies.
What about the spiritual side, the divine encounters?
Divine encounters, or theophanies, were considered hugely significant. People believed gods or divine messengers could appear directly, often at sacred sites or during important journeys. It reflected a deep belief in direct communication from the divine realm. And as we've seen, name changes were huge, culturally and spiritually profound, marking shifts in identity, destiny.
Got it. Now let's zoom in on the key players. Obviously, Jacob, or Israel, is central. Tell us more about him at this point.
Right. Jacob, son of Isaac and Rebekah, grandson of Abraham, Esau's younger twin. His original name, meaning heel grabber or supplanter, really foretold his cunning nature, didn't it?
Yeah.
Especially how he got the birthright and blessing.
The trickster figure.
Exactly. But by Genesis 32, he's returning from Laban's place as a very wealthy man. Big family, 2 wives, 2 handmaids, 11 sons at this point. But underneath all that success, he's deeply burdened by guilt and that bone-deep fear of Esau.
And still scheming, planning.
Still a shrewd planner, yes. Dividing his company, the gift strategy that's Jacob trying to control things. Historically, he embodies that archetype. The trickster, who has to mature into the patriarch, the father of a nation. His transformation is key to the whole Genesis narrative.
And the brother casting that long shadow, Esau. What do we know about him here?
Esau, Jacob's older twin, the one Jacob fled from decades earlier after the deception. And Esau hadn't taken it lightly. He'd sworn to kill Jacob.
So the threat was real.
Very real. Esau's character, though he's mostly offstage in this chapter, is the driving force behind Jacob's anxiety, the source of the narrative tension. He's described as a hunter, a rugged outdoorsman. By now, he's settled in Seir, or Edom, south of the Dead Sea.
And the 400 men.
That detail is crucial. It tells us Esau isn't just some wandering hunter anymore. He's a tribal leader, a chieftain with a significant retinue. He has power, influence, and the means to carry out that old threat if he chooses to.
Then we have the supernatural figures. First, the angels at the start.
Right, the angels of God Jacob meets at Mahanaim. Their presence is this crucial, though maybe temporary, reassurance. Divine messengers confirming God's guidance, God's protection. They remind Jacob and us that there are spiritual forces at work here. It sets a tone of divine oversight, even amidst the human drama.
And then, the central mysterious figure. The man at the Jabbok.
Ah, yes, the enigmatic wrestler. The unidentified figure who grapples with Jacob all night. Who was he? Tradition offers different views.
Like what?
Jacob himself says, I have seen God face to face. So many see this as God himself, maybe a pre-incarnate appearance of Christ, what theologians call a Christophany. Others suggest a powerful divine messenger, a high-ranking angel.
Does it matter exactly who it was?
Perhaps less than what the encounter represents. It highlights God's direct personal involvement in human lives, a God willing to engage, even physically struggle with his people. It embodies those direct divine manifestations, theophanies, that are so characteristic of these early patriarchal stories.
Okay, let's talk about the places. The geography seems really symbolic, too.
Absolutely. Geography in Genesis is rarely just geography. First, you have Mahanaim.
Meaning 2 camps.
Right, or God's camp, where Jacob sees the angels. It symbolizes divine protection, but it also fascinatingly foreshadows Jacob dividing his own company into 2 camps, and maybe even the dual nature of his struggle, physical and spiritual.
Then there's Seir, or Edom.
That's Esau's territory. The mountainous region south of the Dead Sea where Jacob sends his messengers. The name Edom, meaning red, is traditionally linked to Esau's reddish appearance at birth. It marks Esau's domain, the source of Jacob's fear.
And the most critical location.
The Jabbok River, or specifically the ford across it. It's a tributary of the Jordan River in Gilead. This is the precise spot where Jacob sends everyone else across, isolating himself.
The setting for the wrestling match.
Exactly. It symbolizes a boundary, a transition point, a threshold between Jacob's past self and his future transformed self. And there's that amazing wordplay, too. The Hebrew name, Jabbok, sounds like Jacob's name, Yaakov, and the word for wrestle, Jabbok. It just underscores the profound significance of this specific place.
Then Peniel.
Or Penuel. The name Jacob gives the site after the wrestling match, meaning face of God. It becomes a memorial, marking his direct face-to-face encounter with the divine, a sacred spot in the story of his family.
And all this is happening as he returns to
Canaan. the promised land. His ultimate destination, the land promised to Abraham and Isaac. He left it in shame, and now he's approaching it again, transformed but limping, filled with a complex mix of hope and trepidation.
Finally, let's touch on the key things, the objects, symbols, customs that are central here.
Okay. Critically important, underlying everything, is the birthright and blessing.
The things Jacob stole.
Exactly. Acquired through deception, they are the root cause of the rift, the enmity with Esau. They fuel Jacob's fear and his desperate need for reconciliation.
Then the gifts for Esau.
That vast offering of livestock. Hundreds of animals. It wasn't just a nice gesture, it was a strategic, diplomatic attempt to appease Esau, to atone. A common practice, as we said, but the sheer scale shows Jacob's desperation.
And maybe the most enduring thing.
The limp, that permanent physical injury from the wrestling match. It's a constant, visible reminder of the encounter, symbolizing his brokenness, yes, but also his new dependence on God, the humbling of his old, self-reliant ways.
And lastly, the dietary restriction.
Right. The Israelite custom born from this event of not eating the sinew attached to the hip socket, the sciatic nerve area. It highlights the lasting cultural and religious impact, forging a direct link in daily life back to this foundational moment for their patriarch and their nation.
So that wrestling match at the Jabbok, it's clearly more than just a physical fight. It feels packed with layers of meaning, speaking to deeper truths about struggle, faith, and transformation.
Oh, absolutely. It's incredibly rich, metaphorically. It's not just a story about Jacob wrestling. In many ways, it's a story about us wrestling. It encapsulates so many dimensions of the human condition and our interaction with the divine.
So, if it wasn't just about winning a physical fight, what was Jacob really wrestling for? What was the ultimate prize he wouldn't let go of?
He wrestled specifically, persistently, for a blessing. Not for dominance, not just to survive the night, but for that divine affirmation. This symbolizes, I think, humanity's deep, almost innate hunger for God's grace, for his favor.
And getting that often requires a struggle.
It often requires a fervent, persistent wrestle, doesn't it? Through prayer, through seeking, through refusing to give up until you break through. And ultimately, it requires surrendering your own will. Think about the contrast with how Jacob got blessings before.
By trickery, manipulation.
Exactly. He sees them. Here, he's not tricking or taking, he's clinging, persistently demanding it through sheer spiritual will, even when physically broken. It's a profound shift from cunning to desperate, genuine yearning for God's favor.
So it involves intense human effort, but it's also about surrender. It sounds like a paradox.
It is a central paradox of faith, isn't it? That all-night struggle embodies the tension. Intense human effort coupled with ultimate dependence on God. Jacob's stubborn refusal to let go shows incredible spiritual tenacity.
But he doesn't win in the conventional sense. He gets injured.
Right. He's ultimately humbled, wounded by the divine touch that dislocates his hip. And think about it. The divine being could have overpowered Jacob instantly, easily. But instead, he engages, allows the struggle, and then wounds him not to defeat him, but to transform him.
So true strength isn't about beating God.
It teaches that true spiritual strength comes not from prevailing over God, but from surrendering to him, from allowing him to break our self-reliance so he can remake us in his image. It's precisely in that moment of physical concession, of being broken, that Jacob receives his greatest spiritual victory, the blessing, and the new name.
And the timing and setting are crucial too, right? Him being alone, vulnerable.
Definitely. Why this moment? Why does God meet him when he's isolated, terrified, stripped of his family, his wealth, his strategies?
It feels like rock bottom almost.
It does, and it speaks to a profound spiritual truth. God often reveals himself most powerfully when we're in our darkest, loneliest crises, when we're forced to confront our deepest fears, our true selves, the absolute limits of our own self-reliance. It's when our human strategies are exhausted, when we feel we have nowhere else to turn, that we often become most open, most ready for genuine divine intervention.
So the wrestling itself could be seen as a kind of intense prayer.
A powerful metaphor for it, yes, for that spiritual discipline of persistent prayer where you pour out everything your fears, doubts, desires, and refuse to let go until you get a breakthrough, a new understanding, peace. It represents that unyielding pursuit of God.
And maybe wrestling with himself too.
Psychologically, absolutely. That all-night grapple symbolizes Jacob wrestling with his own past, his deceptions, the fears haunting him for decades, his very identity as the heel grabber. It's an internal exorcism, purging the self-reliance, the guilt. He has to resolve that internal conflict before he can possibly face the external one with Esau.
Beyond the metaphorical meaning for Jacob or for us, this story also seems to point forward typologically to future biblical themes and even to Christ.
Yes, this is where it gets really fascinating for understanding the bigger biblical narrative, the divine figure Jacob wrestles with. Many Christian interpreters see this typologically as a pre-incarnate appearance of Jesus Christ, a Christophany.
How so? What's the connection?
Well, think about Jacob, the wounded chosen one, reliant on grace, finding strength in his weakness. It mirrors Christ's role as the suffering servant described in Isaiah 53, wounded for our transgressions, bruised for our iniquities.
And you can see echoes in Christ's own life.
You can draw a powerful parallel to Jesus' intense, prayerful struggle in the Garden of Gethsemane. Another solitary struggle in the dark, wrestling with divine will during a moment of profound crisis, emerging victorious for humanity but ultimately wounded on the cross. Both encounters involve transformation through suffering and surrender.
Wow. And the typology extends beyond Christ.
It does. Jacob's reliance on grace and weakness strongly echoes the Apostle Paul's experience. Paul spoke of his thorn in the flesh, a weakness through which God's power was made perfect. He learned, like Jacob, that divine grace is sufficient, that power comes through weakness, not in spite of it.
So Jacob, Paul, similar patterns.
Similar patterns of divine encounter leading to transformation through acknowledging weakness. And furthermore, Jacob's renaming to Israel, God wrestler, becomes typological for the entire nation that bears his name. It foreshadows the future struggles of the nation of Israel. Their ongoing wrestling with God through disobedience sometimes, through laments, through faithfulness, their struggles with other nations, and their persevering faith. Romans 5 talks about suffering producing perseverance, perseverance character, character hope. Jacob's personal struggle becomes, in a way, the blueprint for his people's collective destiny and relationship with God.
So that limp, it's not just a personal injury. It carries immense symbolic weight.
Immense weight. It challenges our whole idea of strength and blessing.
Sure.
What does it mean to be blessed through brokenness? Jacob's limp isn't just a reminder of the fight. It's a symbol of his transformed yet still fragile human nature.
A sign that strength comes through struggle.
It represents that profound truth. Real strength, deep spiritual understanding, lasting blessing often come not by avoiding struggle, but by engaging it. Not through invincibility, but through vulnerability. Not from being perfect, but from being broken and allowing God to work in that brokenness. It's a badge of grace, a daily testimony that his true power now flows from surrender, not self-reliance. Sometimes our wounds are precisely where God's power shines brightest.
It's impossible to read this chapter and not connect with Jacob's fear. It feels so raw, so relatable. He's just had this divine reassurance angels, Mahanaim, but the second he hears Esau's coming with 400 men.
Boom. He's greatly afraid and distressed. Panic sets in.
Yeah, that anxiety just consumes him, drives him to make these elaborate, almost frantic plans.
And what's really fascinating is how deep-rooted that fear is. It's not just about the 400 men in the present.
It's about the past, isn't it?
Absolutely. He's projecting his unhealed past, the stolen birthright, stolen blessing onto his future. He assumes Esau is still burning with hatred, still out for vengeance, because Jacob knows what he did. He feels responsible and feels powerless to fix it himself.
So the detailed planning, dividing the camps, the gifts, it's all coming from that place of deep worry.
It reveals a mind utterly consumed by worry. It's that very human tendency to try and meticulously plan for every possible worst-case scenario, to micromanage an uncontrollable future out of fear.
But the contrast is so stark. He saw angels. He remembered God's specific promises in his prayer. Yet the fear just overrides it all.
It's a profound disconnect, isn't it? And it highlights such a fundamental tension in our own lives, too. The narrative deliberately sets up this contrast, the supernatural reassurance at Mahanaim, the explicit recall of God's promises in prayer.
And
yet the fear of Esau overshadows his trust. It perfectly illustrates that common human tendency to doubt God's providence, God's promises, when we're faced with an immediate, tangible threat. His actions show a real lack of trust, operating out of pure apprehension rather than fully embracing the divine assurance he'd received. It shows just how powerful fear can be, even overriding miraculous experiences.
almost like the fear itself is a weapon trying to distract him. Get him to focus only on the scary circumstances.
That's a really insightful way to put it. You could almost see Jacob's fear as the smell that the enemy is around, spiritually speaking. It's trying desperately to get him to walk by sight. Look, 400 men and not by faith. Remember what God promised you.
Focusing on the visible threat rather than the invisible protection.
Exactly. It's a spiritual tactic we all face, isn't it? The enemy of our souls whispering doubts, amplifying threats, trying to make us forget the assurances, the past faithfulness, the promises we've received.
So, how does Jacob's anxiety, his planning frenzy, his struggle to trust, how does that mirror our own modern battles with worry? The parallels seem really strong.
They are incredibly strong and relatable. Think about how often we, like Jacob, let past failures, mistakes, or hurts define our present and dictate our future fears.
Worrying about things that happened long ago.
Right. Projecting an unhealed past onto an uncertain future. We worry incessantly about consequences, maybe losing a job, getting rejected, facing conflicts that might never actually happen, or not in the way we imagine.
And we also receive assurances, don't we? Maybe through faith or community or just past experience of getting through things.
We do. We have assurances of grace, provision, support. Yet, just like Jacob devising his gifts and dividing his camps, how often do we devise our own elaborate, human-centric safety nets?
Like what? Give some examples.
Maybe excessive insurance for every conceivable risk, contingency funds that stretch us thin, over-planning every single detail of a project, a trip, a conversation, trying to control every variable rather than trusting in a larger providence, or even just trusting the process or the people involved.
It sounds like we, just like Jacob, expend a huge amount of energy trying to control situations solely through our own efforts.
Exactly. His frantic dividing of assets, his calculated gifts, they vividly illustrate our human tendency to believe that enough planning, enough strategy can negate all risk, manage all fear.
But the story shows that's not where his peace comes from.
No. The narrative powerfully demonstrates that Jacob's true peace, the resolution of his deepest anxieties, only comes after his spiritual surrender, after the wrestling match, after he's pushed beyond his own capacity to strategize.
So it's the encounter, the surrender that calms the fear.
It shows that a real transformative encounter with the divine, a moment of profound surrender, can quiet anxieties that our most elaborate human plans simply cannot touch. And what's even more striking and such a potent lesson for us is the actual outcome.
Which we find out in the next chapter.
Right. In Genesis 33, Esau runs to meet Jacob, embraces him, weeps. The feared violence never happens. Jacob's profound terror was ultimately unfounded.
That's a huge lesson.
It's a timeless lesson. How often does worry exhaust us, mentally and emotionally, over things God has already taken care of, disarmed, or is planning to resolve in ways we couldn't possibly predict?
Thinking about our modern anxieties, money worries, health scares, political strife.
Exactly. How often do we spend sleepless nights over planning, creating mental camps and gifts, strategizing endlessly, only to find the worst-case scenario never materializes? Or that the resolution came from a completely unexpected direction, or that God had already softened the hearts involved?
But amidst all that panic and planning, Jacob does pray. That prayer seems crucial, even if the fear comes back.
Yes, and that balance is critical. Despite his panic, despite his strategies, his prayer in Genesis 32 is a powerful model. He brings his deepest, most primal fears directly to God.
He doesn't hide them.
No. He reminds God and himself of the promises. He openly acknowledges his unworthiness, and he pleads desperately for deliverance. It's not a prayer of self-sufficiency. It's an authentic, vulnerable appeal to God's mercy and faithfulness.
So it shows both sides. Responsible action and reliance on God.
It shows that vital balance. Doing everything you can, taking responsible action, but ultimately relying on God for the outcome. True peace, lasting confidence, doesn't come solely from our plans. It arises when we entrust our deepest fears, our vulnerabilities, our uncertain futures to God, allowing faith, cultivated through that wrestling, to displace anxiety. It's about doing our part, then letting go. Trusting his plan is bigger and more merciful than ours.
Okay, let's really dig into the climax of this chapter, arguably the most significant part. This concept of the name change. From Jacob to Israel. This isn't just getting a nickname.
Not even close. It's a seismic shift, a complete transformation with incredibly deep spiritual, psychological, theological, and social implications. It's one of the most pivotal identity shifts in the entire Bible.
You mentioned earlier how much names meant back then.
Hugely important, especially in ancient Near Eastern cultures. A name wasn't just how people identified you. It often described your character, your essence, even prophesied your destiny.
So changing the name changes the person, in a sense.
It signifies a fundamental shift, moving beyond who Jacob was, the heel grabber, the cunning schemer, to who he is now irrevocably destined to become, defined by this divine encounter.
Let's break that down, starting with the spiritual analysis. What does this name change signify at the core spiritual level?
Spiritually, it represents a profound, irreversible transformation. Jacob literally defined his actions from birth, supplanting, deceiving. The new name Israel, he who struggles with God, or perhaps more like God strives or God persists, signifies a radical spiritual rebirth.
A new relationship with God.
A new, legitimate relationship earned through struggle, not manipulation. He's no longer defined by his deceitful past, but by this encounter and a calling to a new purpose. It represents that dramatic shift from self-reliance and scheming to a deep, hard-won divine dependence. His wrestling yielded a blessing he could only receive, not take.
Sounds like conversion experiences people describe today.
It absolutely parallels modern experiences of conversion or deep spiritual renewal where an old self dies, making way for a new creation. It indicates Jacob has prevailed, yes, but more importantly, he's been fundamentally changed in his nature and destiny by the hand of God himself.
So it reshapes his core identity, which must have had a huge psychological impact on him personally.
Yeah, the psychological impact would be profound. Think about it. He gets a completely new self-perception bestowed upon him by God. He's no longer the guy running from his past, weighed down by guilt and the shadow of his deceptions.
He's now the one who wrestled with God.
Right. He's grappling directly with his destiny, redefined by this powerful encounter. The name Israel offers him a fresh start, a chance to move beyond those old manipulative tendencies and embrace a new, authentic self, sanctioned by the divine.
And that's crucial for healing, right?
Absolutely crucial for his healing and personal growth. Remember, he was alone at the Jabbok, stripped bare force to confront his deepest anxieties, his true self. The name change allows him to move past that negative self-concept toward a more empowered identity.
And the limp plays into this psychologically, too.
The limp is the permanent, visible reminder of this psychological and spiritual shift. It's a constant physical prompt about his brokenness, yes, but also his newfound dependence on God. It forces him to rely on more than his own cleverness. It reframes his entire self-concept based on this direct, powerful, humbling encounter that literally marked him forever.
Okay, let's look at it theologically. What does this renaming tell us about God and his relationship with humanity?
Theologically, it's a powerful testament to God's incredible grace and his sovereign power. God doesn't just condemn Jacob for his past. He meets him in his absolute vulnerability, refines his character through the struggle, and then gives him a completely new identity.
It shows God can use flawed people.
It's a central theme of salvation, isn't it? God's ability to take a deeply flawed, imperfect person and transform them into something entirely new. It shows that human weaknesses and failures cannot ultimately thwart God's divine purposes.
And God does this elsewhere in Genesis. Renaming people.
Yes, it's a pattern. God renames Abram to Abraham, Sarai to Sarah. These name changes mark a new covenant, a profound transformation, a purpose that transcends their old identity.
So Israel isn't just for Jacob.
Critically, the name Israel establishes not just Jacob's personal identity, but the name of the nation that will carry the covenant promise forward. It directly links Jacob's personal transformation to the destiny of God's chosen people. Their collective identity is rooted right here in this individual struggle.
It highlights God's direct involvement.
His direct personal involvement in human affairs, engaging individuals intimately, using even conflictual situations like a wrestling match to achieve his larger divine plan. And importantly, the new name comes because Jacob clung to God in faith, not as a reward for his physical strengths or cleverness.
Finally, how did this change impact Jacob socially and the future nation?
Socially, the name Israel gives Jacob a completely new standing in his world. He's no longer just the deceiver who ran away. He's now a man marked, blessed, transformed by a divine encounter.
It changes how people see him.
It has to. The new name, combined with that visible limp, serves as undeniable testimony. It bestows upon him a new social standing, a new identity as the patriarch, the foundational figure of a great nation to come.
So Israel becomes a collective identity too.
Precisely. It's the genesis of a people, a nation. It signifies their unique, often turbulent, but foundational relationship with God. It sets the precedent for the social and religious identity of the future Israelite nation, establishing their origins in this struggle for divine blessing.
Names really carry destiny back then.
They signified destiny and purpose. This renaming ensures Jacob's transformative legacy is carried forward by his descendants. And that dietary law about the hip, it ensures this foundational moment is remembered, memorialized in the daily life of his descendants, connecting their ongoing social and religious identity directly back to their ancestors' life-altering, body-altering encounter. It becomes woven into their cultural fabric.
It's amazing how this ancient story, Jacob wrestling with God, with himself, with his past, it just echoes so clearly through time. How is this narrative still relevant for us today, living in our, often complex and chaotic modern world?
It's incredibly relevant. Jacob's journey provides such a profound spiritual blueprint for navigating so many contemporary challenges. It speaks directly to our fears, our identity struggles, our search for meaning, our deep need for transformation.
Let's start with that fear and anxiety. Jacob felt it so acutely, and it's something so many people grapple with today.
Absolutely. Jacob's deep-seated, paralyzing fear of Esau resonates powerfully with anyone facing daunting challenges, maybe haunted by past mistakes, or staring into an uncertain future.
So what's the encouragement from the story?
The narrative strongly encourages you, the listener, to trust in divine protection, in guidance, even when circumstances feel overwhelming, even when you're consumed by worry about things that might never happen the way you fear.
Moving past the paralysis of fear.
Right. It's a call to move beyond that paralysis and rely on God's providence, just as Jacob eventually had to surrender his frantic strategies. Remember, his worst fears didn't come true. How often do we exhaust ourselves worrying over outcomes God has already handled or disarmed? Jacob's story urges us to bring our deepest fears to God, allowing faith, often forged in struggle, to displace anxiety.
And the wrestling itself, that intense all-night struggle. How does that speak to our own growth?
It beautifully symbolizes the universal human journey, doesn't it? Wrestling with our personal struggles, our doubts, our insecurities, wrestling with our very identity, it teaches a vital lesson. Profound spiritual growth, deeper self-understanding, finding real purpose often comes through persistent struggle.
Not by avoiding the hard stuff.
Not by avoiding it, but by being willing to confront our fears, face the unvarnished truth about our past, about ourselves. True, lasting transformation, the kind that redefines who we are, usually comes from an internal spiritual encounter that gets to our core identity, leaving a permanent mark. It's like the growth we seek through therapy, spiritual disciplines, or just navigating life's messy, difficult passages. It's not comfortable, but it's deeply fruitful.
The story also seems to offer hope for reconciliation, for mending broken relationships.
Yes, definitely. That impending reconciliation between Jacob and Esau, despite Jacob's terror, is such a powerful example for anyone dealing with estranged relationships or deep conflicts.
What does it teach us about that process?
It highlights that reconciliation, while incredibly difficult, requiring humility, vulnerability, confronting painful history, can lead to profound freedom, unity, positive change. It offers real hope for healing, even deep wounds. And it suggests that while our human efforts towards peace are valuable, the real breakthrough, the turning of hearts, is often a supernatural work of God. Forgiveness is possible and transformative, even after decades of hurt.
That idea of identity feels especially relevant today, in our world of social media, curated personas.
Oh, absolutely. What is authentic identity in our filtered world? An era of constant social pressure, performative self-presentation. Jacob's name change, that divinely given new identity, speaks directly to our contemporary struggles with identity formation, self-perception, the weight of our past. In an age where identity can feel like something we just construct or project online, Jacob's story is a powerful reminder of authentic internal transformation. It challenges the idea that identity is just performative. It affirms that true, enduring identity is found in a genuine, often messy, deeply personal relationship with the divine. It's like shedding a toxic, self-made identity and bravely stepping into your true, God-given purpose, moving beyond old labels into a new, spirit-breathed self.
For people of faith, this chapter must also reinforce a belief in God's active involvement in our lives.
Precisely. For many, Jacob at the Jabbok powerfully reaffirms belief in a higher power who isn't distant but actively, personally involved. A God who offers guidance, yes, but also challenges us for our growth and ultimately works to fulfill his plans, even through our struggles.
So trials aren't just obstacles.
It encourages seeing trials not just as roadblocks, but as potential opportunities for deeper connection with God. It reminds us that God meets us right where we are in our exhaustion, our mental health struggles, our loneliness. It suggests true breakthroughs often come through that persistent, wrestling kind of prayer, not quick fixes.
And finally, back to that image of Jacob's limp, that permanent mark of his encounter. What's the takeaway there about strength and weakness?
Jacob limped into his reconciliation, limped into his new identity as Israel. That potent image teaches us that our scars, our losses, our traumas, our perceived weaknesses, they often become the very places where God chooses to display his greatest power and work profound transformation.
Like Paul's thorn in the flesh.
Exactly. As 2 Corinthians 12.9 says, God's power is made perfect in weakness. True strength, lasting blessing, often emerge not from trying to be invincible, but from embracing vulnerability, humility, from surrendering our weaknesses to him. Our scars aren't signs of defeat. They can be badges of grace, powerful testaments to divine breakthroughs and the enduring strength forged in the crucible of struggle.
Hashtag tag outro. Wow. Today, we've really walked alongside Jacob on this profound, life-altering journey. From a man driven by fear in his deceptive past to a humbled, tenacious man of faith, forever renamed Israel through that mysterious night-long struggle right at the turning point of his life.
Yeah, we've seen how this ancient story really serves as a kind of spiritual blueprint for how we can navigate our own anxieties, how we might find the courage to seek reconciliation, and how we can embrace an authentic identity, one rooted not in our own strength or cleverness, but in that place of spiritual surrender and divine encounter.
And that limp, it really sticks with you.
It does. And if we really think about it, Jacob's limp wasn't a sign of failure or defeat, not at all. You could truly see it as a badge of grace, a permanent physical reminder that real strength isn't found in overcoming God, but in that profound, ultimately liberating act of surrendering to him.
It's in those moments of wrestling.
Exactly. In our moments of wrestling, in our deepest vulnerability, that's where we too might receive a new name, a new identity, and find the spiritual strength to move forward, fundamentally changed.
So as you reflect on Jacob's incredible journey, here's a final provocative thought for you to mull over. What limp, what persistent struggle, what area of weakness or past hurt in your own life is God inviting you to surrender today? What unresolved past, what paralyzing fear, what cherished self-reliance might he be asking you to lay down at his feet so that you too might walk away from that encounter, maybe not unscathed, but profoundly blessed, truly transformed, and marked for a new, divinely purposed future?